Hey Pottery People! Welcome to Pottery People, our YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about iron decals and how to apply them. And what's great about iron decals is you can get really clear imagery onto your work and it's permanent, it won't rub off, it can go in the microwave, it can go to the dishwasher, and it's pretty easy to do. So I'm using this example to show you a finished product that has an iron decal included in it by an artist named Stephanie Nicole Martin. And she uses a combination of iron decals and color decals. So the iron ones is just right here where you see Jimmy's face. And these, we're gonna talk a little bit about, that you can create these at home with your own images. So that's really fun and kind of a perk about iron decals. But these colored ones that you see surrounding his portrait, those are commercially made. We don't have printers for home studios yet that we can use to make these. So this is the part, or this is the style of decal that I'll be showing you how to do today. Having the right equipment is really the most important thing for making them easily. And what you will need, and there's lists online available, and we'll put them in the notes below also. There's specific printers that you can use to print iron decals, and what's really interesting about that is it's not specifically made for pottery decals. Those LaserJet printers just happen to have a certain high content of iron in their black toner. So someone somewhere figured that hack out, that it had iron in the toner and you could use it for pottery. So, and a couple tips if you want to start working with iron decals. Some things that I've learned a little bit the hard way over the years. When I first started using iron decals, I did a lot of things that didn't end up working out. So a couple things. When you're working with iron decals, you want your water to be really clean. Don't use your clay water or your clay bucket or your rinse bucket that you're using for glaze. You want a completely clean water container. And the reason for that is if there's clay mixed in with your water, it will leave sort of a matte film on and around the decal because you're adding sort of a thin layer of clay over where the decal is if the decal is covered with clay. So that's important. Also, some people use distilled water. So if you're having troubles with haloing around your decals after they're completely finished, you might consider getting some distilled water. I haven't had too much trouble with that, but probably just depends on where you live. So next I want to show you how to apply a decal. So we will go ahead and grab a mug and a decal and I'll show you how it's done. All right, so now that you have a little bit of basic knowledge about decals, let's go ahead and start applying one. So what I have here is my decals that I have gone ahead and pre-cut from my water slide decal paper. And before you get to this point, what you're gonna have is when you get your decal paper, there's a couple of things to be aware of. So for one, it's got this coating of tissue paper on it that you're gonna peel off before you put it through your printer. And then what you'll have after you peel this off is kind of like cardstock with a little bit of a shiny coating on it. And what you have there after you've removed your tissue paper, and you can see I've used this one as my example because I forgot to take tissue paper off and it printed on it, so I thought that was kind of funny. But what you're left with minus after you get rid of the tissue paper is it really is basically just cardstock, and then the decal itself is that shiny coating. And when it gets wet, those two separate and the backing, the cardstock is discarded, and then you've got this really thin clear layer, and that's your decal that slides off of the paper. It's very much like a temporary tattoo if you've ever used a temporary tattoo. It's really similar to that. So let me show you how it works. I've got my nice clean water here. I'm just gonna slip the decal in. And when I'm working on multiple pieces at a time, I'll just put a whole bunch in there. That's fine to do. But if you do have that, change the water pretty often because the adhesive gets in the water and can make it a little, it'll start to feel slippery. If the water starts to feel slippery, go ahead and change it. But for just one decal, it can hang out. It's gonna be fine. So it takes a minute. I'd say it takes between 1 and 3 minutes. I have tried this with warm water, but I have found with hot water, the decals really curl up tight, and so that makes them a little bit harder to work with. So I'm working with cold water today. And of course, just working with this one decal, I'm wanting to be impatient and try to slide it off. But if ever you're going to try this process, be patient, because if you try to kind of do like this between your fingers and slide it off too early, sometimes they can tear because it is just a thin layer that you're left with when the decal's off of the paper. I'm gonna go ahead and grab my mug now. Here's the one that we're gonna put this decal on. And I'll show you kind of some of my other ones. So these I have stacked up, but I usually keep bowls around for the littler ones, just so I kind of have a system for keeping them organized. And the ones that I use over and over again, I don't have to dig through and sort through a big pile of decals. So organization. Organization is always important in any studio space. So this is looking pretty good. It's looking ready to go. And what you'll see when it starts to get ready is the decal might start to kind of float and peel away in the water like that. That's a good sign that you can go ahead and lift it out. Also, it'll kind of slide like back and forth. Now, what you don't want to do here is take it all the way off because the paper backing is your friend just for another couple seconds in the process. So I'm going to dip that one more time and I'll show you why the paper helps. So this material, you can start to see that the decal is made out of is really flimsy and it'll like want to crinkle up on you. So the paper is going to help you keep it flat while you get the initial application on. Okay, so it just looks like this. Kind of center it where you want, hold it down, and then you pull the paper out from under it, like that. So it's pretty easy. It does get more difficult when you're doing bigger decals, particularly on a rounded piece or maybe a piece that has some volume to it, like a piece that might have kind of more of an hourglass shape. This can get a little bit more difficult. So if you're wanting to put decals on pieces that have a real dramatic shape, just beware of that. Sometimes you can cut little notches or darts to make them lay a little easier. So that's just something you kind of have to figure out as you go. So from here, I'm almost done. I'm just gonna pat this with a towel, and I am applying some pressure because sometimes some little water pockets will hang out underneath and not let the decal get totally flat. So I'm just kind of pressing those out and absorbing them up with my towel. And that's it. Your decal is applied. So from here, to get this to set, you're gonna fire it to cone 06, 06, or 05. I've had some times where my decals that were at the top of the kiln, where it maybe doesn't get quite as hot, I fired them to 06 and they rubbed off when I was done. So I always take them to 05 just to give them that little touch more heat and make sure that they get really set. But if that ever happens, if you don't get them completely fired to a high enough temperature and they're sloughing off, you can just fire them again to a little bit higher and they should be okay. So the application process is pretty easy, and I hope that you guys found this interesting and that you'll try it because decals are really fun to play with, particularly if you get one of those printers with the iron toner in it, because the possibilities are just absolutely endless. You can put anything you want on. So it's pretty cool and fun to play around with. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you next time.